I never thought my search for love would lead me here, standing in a stranger's mansion, my heart racing under the glow of a bedroom light. I was just 25, lost between dreams and heartbreak, when a 40-year-old billionaire leaned in and kissed me. My life changed that night. If you believe in love, second chances, and stories that stay with you, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more, and stay until the very end, because the twist in my story, you won't see it coming. My name doesn't matter as much as my story does. I was 25, a black woman living in a city that never slowed down, yet somehow I felt like life was passing me by. On the outside, I looked fine, working, paying my bills, keeping myself together. But inside, I carried a quiet loneliness I didn't dare say out loud. Dating had been exhausting. I'd sit across from men who looked me in the eye and promised forever, only to vanish before the next sunrise. I grew used to the cycle of sweet words that turned bitter too soon. I learned how to read the signs: delayed replies, half-hearted effort, excuses wrapped in charm. And each time it happened, I felt a little smaller, like love had a way of skipping right over me. Being 25 is supposed to feel full of hope, right? But my hope was dimming. I watched friends post engagement rings, weddings, babies. I clapped for them, cheered, said all the right things. But when I came home to my little apartment, the silence reminded me of what I didn't have. My walls had heard my prayers more than anyone else. They had witnessed me whispering, "When will it be my turn?" I lived in a small one-bedroom place, nothing fancy, just enough for me. A creaky floor in the hallway, a kitchen barely big enough for one person, and a bed that always felt too wide for just me. Every night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would feel like to have someone reach for my hand in the dark. I didn't want riches or perfection, just someone who saw me, fully and without hesitation. Work filled my days. I poured myself into it because at least work gave me structure. My job wasn't glamorous, but it kept me grounded. Still, even there, I often felt invisible. The girl who always smiled, always delivered, but never quite stood out. It was as if the world had decided I was meant to blend in. And maybe I accepted that too. But deep down, I dreamed. Oh, I dreamed big. I imagined being swept into a love so powerful it silenced the noise of my doubts. I imagined laughter spilling across a dinner table, a kiss that told me I was the only one. Some nights I let those dreams carry me away, only to wake up and remind myself not to expect too much, because expecting too much always left me broken. The truth was, I was tired, tired of men who loved the idea of me but never stayed long enough to truly love me. Tired of empty promises that turned to dust in my hands. Tired of being the strong one when, really, I just wanted to be held. It's hard to admit that kind of loneliness without feeling weak, but it was real. And it weighed on me more than I cared to admit. Still, I wasn't bitter. Somewhere, a small part of me still believed love could find me, even if the rest of me laughed at the thought. I'd catch myself watching old couples holding hands in the park, or hearing love songs on the radio, and my chest would ache with both longing and disbelief. Love felt like something reserved for other people, not for me. That was my life at 25. A quiet apartment, a long list of disappointments, a heart both fragile and hopeful. I lived in between the cracks, smiling during the day, questioning everything at night. If you had asked me then what my future looked like, I would have shrugged. I didn't know. I only knew I wanted to feel chosen, seen, loved without condition. And yet, I never imagined how love would actually find me. I never imagined it wouldn't be a boy my age or a man from my neighborhood. I never imagined it wouldn't come from someone who looked like me, thought like me, or lived like me. I never imagined who would notice me next. It happened on an evening that began like any other. I had dragged myself through another long day at work, the kind of day where your shoulders feel heavier than they should. My plan was simple: grab a cup of coffee from the cafe near my apartment, then head home to my little corner of quiet. I didn't expect anything unusual. I certainly didn't expect him. The cafe was buzzing with its usual rhythm: machines hissing, spoons clinking, soft music drifting in the background. I ordered my drink the same way I always did and chose a table by the window. That was my spot, where I could watch the world move by and pretend I wasn't sitting alone. And then he walked in. I noticed him before I wanted to, not because of money or status. I didn't know any of that then. It was his presence. There was a stillness about him, as if the noise in the room bent itself around him. He wore a simple jacket, nothing flashy, yet somehow he seemed out of place, like the cafe wasn't built to hold someone like him. He caught my eyes for just a second. I looked away quickly, pretending to scroll through my phone. But something in me stirred, a small curiosity I tried to silence. I told myself, don't start. He's probably married, probably another disappointment waiting to happen. Still, fate had other plans. The cafe was full, and when he picked up his drink, the only empty seat left was across from me. He paused, polite but certain, and asked, "Do you mind if I sit here?" His voice was calm, deep, with a warmth that made me nod before I had time to think. At first, we didn't talk much, just small exchanges, the kind strangers share when silence feels too heavy. But soon one question led to another. He asked about my work, and unlike most people, he actually listened. I found myself laughing at his dry humor, surprised at how easy it was to talk to him. There was no show, no pretense. He wasn't trying to impress me, and yet he did. His words carried weight, like he had lived 1,000 lives and still found wonder in small things. I was used to men who spoke too loudly about themselves, who filled every space with ego. But here was someone who asked more than he answered, who looked at me like what I said mattered. I noticed the faint lines near his eyes when he smiled, the kind that only come from years of real living. He seemed older, yes, but not in a way that put distance between us. Instead, it felt grounding, like I was speaking to someone who had seen storms and survived them. I kept telling myself not to read into it. Just a stranger, just a coffee, just a moment. But deep inside, something shifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as a background character in someone else's story, but as a person worth noticing. When he finally stood to leave, he hesitated. He looked at me with a softness that lingered longer than it should have, and then he asked a question that caught me completely off guard. His words were simple, but they held a weight that pressed into me, leaving me breathless. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of everything. And I'll never forget it, because that was the night he asked me something that stopped my heart. I didn't see him again for a few days after that night at the cafe, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. His words, his calm way of listening, the way he made the noisy world feel quiet. I replayed it all in my mind. I told myself it was silly. He was probably just a passing stranger. But fate, it seems, wasn't finished with me yet. The second time we met, it wasn't in a small cafe. It was in a place that instantly made me feel out of my depth. A restaurant uptown, the kind where the lights glowed like gold and the air itself seemed expensive. I wasn't even supposed to be there. A coworker had invited me last minute, and I almost said no, but I went, and there he was. He wasn't wearing a simple jacket this time. He was dressed in a tailored suit that fit him like it was stitched by hand. He carried himself with the same calm I remembered, but now I could see it clearer. This man belonged in a different world, a world I had only ever seen in magazines or movies. When he noticed me across the room, his expression softened into that same warm recognition I had felt days before. He excused himself from the people around him, people who looked powerful, important, and walked straight toward me. My heart raced. I tried to act casual, but my hands betrayed me, trembling as I held my glass. "Funny running into you here," he said with a half smile, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. But it wasn't natural at all. This wasn't coincidence. It felt like a collision of two lives that were never meant to touch. We talked again, just like before, and the ease returned. But as the night went on, the pieces started falling together. The way staff treated him, the respect in people's eyes when they spoke his name, the whispers around the room. By the end of the evening, the truth came out, not from his mouth, but from someone else's. He wasn't just a man with kind eyes and quiet humor. He was a billionaire, a 40-year-old man who lived in a world built on wealth and power, the kind of life I had never even brushed against. The revelation stunned me. My first instinct was disbelief. I wanted to laugh it off, call it a joke. But then I remembered the way people deferred to him, the way everything seemed to bend in his presence. It wasn't a joke, it was real. And with that truth came a flood of emotions. I felt small, insignificant, like a guest in a story that didn't belong to me. What could a man like him want with a woman like me? I was just 25, living in a tiny apartment, barely keeping my heart together after so many letdowns. He, on the other hand, had the kind of life people only dream about. I wanted to pull back, to protect myself before I got caught in something I couldn't handle. But then, there was him. The way he leaned in to hear me speak, the way his eyes softened when I laughed, the way he seemed uninterested in the chaos of wealth around him. He wasn't showing off. He wasn't trying to dazzle me. He was just present, and that made it even harder. Because beneath all the fear, I felt something undeniable growing inside me, something that whispered, maybe he doesn't see what you lack. Maybe he sees you. But still, the question weighed heavy. Why me? Why now? Why would a man who had everything be looking at me like I was the one thing he couldn't live without? I didn't have the answers then. All I knew was that his truth had changed everything, and I couldn't go back to the way life felt before him. It wasn't one grand event that brought me to his home. It was a string of quiet moments that somehow led me there. A late dinner that stretched into laughter, a walk beneath streetlights where silence felt comfortable instead of awkward, and the kind of conversations that made time disappear. He invited me over one evening, not with arrogance, but with a softness that made it feel safe. His home was nothing like mine, yet it wasn't the size or the luxury that struck me. It was the way he lived inside it. No pretension, no performance, just warmth. A shelf lined with old books, photographs tucked into frames, the faint smell of cedar and something clean. It felt less like a billionaire's mansion and more like a man's refuge. We wandered from room to room, talking as if we had known each other for years. He shared stories of mistakes he'd made, lessons learned, and the loneliness that often came with success. I shared pieces of myself, too, the fears I carried, the weight of always being overlooked, the way love had left me bruised but still stubbornly hopeful. For once, I didn't feel like I was speaking into the void. He listened, really listened, and it made me feel whole. When we reached his bedroom, it wasn't planned. We had simply been walking, talking, and suddenly we were there. The light above cast a soft glow, filling the room with a quiet intimacy. I froze for a moment, unsure of what stepping inside meant. But he didn't rush me. He didn't push. He only stood close enough that I could feel the steadiness of his presence. There was a pause, a silence so thick it made my chest ache. He looked at me, not at my clothes, not at my figure, but at me. And in that look, I felt seen in a way I had never been before. Then he whispered, almost as if speaking too loudly would shatter the moment, "You don't have to be anyone else with me." Before I could respond, he leaned forward, slow enough to give me every chance to step away. But I didn't. My breath caught as his lips met mine under the glow of that light. The kiss wasn't rushed, wasn't greedy. It was gentle, steady, filled with a tenderness that spoke louder than any promise ever had. I felt my heart unravel in that moment. Every wall I had built, every fear I had clung to, melted beneath the weight of something real. I wasn't just a girl in a small apartment anymore. I was a woman being kissed by a man who had everything, yet chose to stand there with me under a simple bedroom light, as if I was enough. And in that instant, I believed, for the first time in a long time, that maybe love was meant for me too. After that night, nothing in my life felt the same. The kiss lingered on my lips, but so did the questions in my mind. I wanted to let myself fall, to lean fully into what we were building, but fear kept tugging at me. Fear of the gap between us, fear of not being enough. People around us noticed quickly. Whispers started. Some of my friends raised eyebrows, their voices laced with doubt. "He's too old for you. Men like him don't settle down with girls like us." I laughed it off in front of them, but when I was alone, those words echoed louder than I wanted to admit. And then there was me, 25, working hard just to keep my little life afloat. And him, 40, a man with wealth that could buy the world twice over. What did I have to offer him besides my heart? Would that ever be enough? I almost pulled away. In fact, there were days I tried. Days when I ignored his calls, convinced myself to set boundaries, told myself it was safer to retreat than to risk heartbreak. But every time, he showed me a steadiness I wasn't used to. He didn't chase me with flashy promises. He didn't smother me with gifts. He simply reminded me, in small and gentle ways, that he was there, that he wasn't going anywhere unless I asked him to. And slowly I began to realize the truth. The doubts weren't about him, they were about me. All my life I had been told, in words or in silence, that I wasn't enough. Not beautiful enough, not light enough, not polished enough, not worthy enough of real love. Those voices had lived inside me for years, and now they were trying to convince me to run from the very thing I had always prayed for. But he saw through all of that. When I was with him, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel overlooked. I felt like I belonged, not because of what I had, but because of who I was. That was the difference. One night, as we sat together in quiet, I confessed my fears to him, every doubt, every insecurity, every reason I thought this couldn't work. He listened without interruption, his eyes steady on mine. And when I finished, he reached for my hand and said, "Love isn't about matching lives. It's about choosing each other every day, no matter what those lives look like." His words sank deep, heavier than any I'd ever heard. In that moment, I understood. Love isn't about what the world thinks is logical or fair. Love is about choosing again and again, even when it scares you. And so, I chose. I chose him. I chose us. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Looking back now, I almost don't recognize the woman I was before him. The 25-year-old girl who sat alone in a small apartment, convinced love had overlooked her forever. That girl feels like a shadow compared to the woman I am now, because love did find me, and it found me in the most unexpected way. It didn't come dressed in perfection. It didn't arrive wrapped in fairy tales or tied with a neat bow. It came through a man who was nothing like what I had pictured. A man older than me, wealthier than I could ever imagine, and yet, beneath all of that, simply human. A man who kissed me softly under the glow of a bedroom light, and in that kiss told me I was finally seen. If I've learned anything, it's this. Love doesn't follow rules. It doesn't ask permission from society. It doesn't wait until your life looks polished and perfect. Love finds you in the mess, in the doubts, in the spaces you least expect. And when it does, you have a choice. Run from it out of fear, or open yourself to the risk of being truly loved. I won't pretend it was easy. The whispers, the doubts, the insecurities, they didn't disappear overnight. But I learned that real love isn't about avoiding fear. It's about standing in it together. It's about choosing someone again and again, even when the world doesn't understand. And maybe that's what I want you to take from my story. Not the glamour of who he was, not the shock of his wealth or age, but the truth that love can come for you too, no matter how many times you've been overlooked, no matter how invisible you've felt. No matter how long you've waited, you are not too late. You are not too much. You are not impossible to love. Because if love could find me, a girl who once cried herself to sleep in a lonely apartment, then it can find you. And when it does, I hope you let it in. I hope you let it soften the walls around your heart. I hope you let it remind you that you are worthy, you are seen, you are enough. So if you're listening to me now, if you've made it to this part of my story, maybe it's because you needed the reminder I once needed too. Don't give up on love. Don't bury your heart under fear. Keep it open even when it hurts, even when it feels impossible. Because love doesn't arrive on your timeline. It arrives when it's meant to. And when it does, it will change everything. If my story touched you, share it with someone who might need hope today. And if you believe deep down that your love story is still waiting for you, stay with me. There are more stories to tell, more reminders that you are not alone, because this is just the beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like love was out of reach, I hope this reminds you it can find you anywhere, even when you least expect it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful love stories. Your support means the world and helps me bring more real, unforgettable stories straight to you.